Hello everyone, welcome. Myself Vivek Raj. Today I will be talking about the UPSC Mains 2024 GS Paper 2, and particularly I will be dealing with the Polity and Constitution, and after that I will be also taking up the social issues questions, the social justice question, right? So basically, first of all, I will talk about the nature of the question paper, the entire question paper of GS paper 2, how it went and how it was different from the last year question paper. We will talk about that first of all. Okay, so if I am commenting on that what was the nature of question, then I have seen that the question paper was little tricky. We cannot say that it was so much of difficulty it was having, or we can say it was too easy, but definitely we can place it under the category of moderate category. Okay, so as we have seen that there have been questions in this particular paper which were asking for a particular specific information. They were very specific or oriented to a particular idea. For example, first question that we will be looking into, that was talking about the one election, one nation, one election, and so it asks for various committees recommendation, and with that of special focus on the one nation, one election, right? And similarly they have given other questions where, like, on the face of that question, it will be looking like that question is very obvious, but when you will be start writing, then you will get to know that there are so much of technicalities involved. And for example, we got a question with respect to Lok Adalat and the arbitration mechanism. So if we are looking into that, then what we generally found is that people used to have very brief idea about the Lok Adalat and the arbitration process, right? But they asked about the comparison, so it becomes difficult for the people, because it may not be possible for people to write the distinction with respect to the 5 points. Okay, so this may be a possibility. So question paper has been moderate level, of moderate level, and definitely the question that they asked, they were from the very known topics, we can say. They were not very unknown kind of topics, right? So let's begin with the questions. So first of all, we have a question to talk about. So here is the first question that you can see. So question is about, examine the need for electoral reforms as suggested by various committees, with particular, this is very important keyword of this particular question, with particular reference to one nation, one election principle, right? So if you will be talking about need for electoral reform suggested by various committees, then it may not be serving the purpose for this particular question. The question is specifically asking that with particular reference to one nation, one election. So while you will be talking about various committees, it should be carefully noted that you are not over explaining the recommendations of the committee, but you are completely focusing, or most of the time you are focusing on this particular aspect, that is particular reference to one nation, one election. I hope the idea is very clear. So here I have some list of the electoral reforms committees that we have seen in the past. So first you can see that Justice Venkatachalya Commission, so it provided for reforms in appointment of election commissioner, decriminalization of politics, increase financial transparency in electoral campaign. So very briefly you will be talking about these committees, as we have to focus on particular reference to one election, one nation, one election. Okay, then we have the Goswami Committee. It also provided for electoral malpractices, like it recommendation with respect to this. Then curb excessive expenditure by the candidate, it was provided by this committee. Okay, so briefly you will be talking about these committees, because reforms suggested by various committees. but a special focus will be on the one nation, one election. Okay. Then the next we have is National Commission to review working of the Constitution, right? National Commission to commission to review the working of the Constitution. So it has provided for curbing the national political defection, addressing black money, then suggested state funding of electoral campaign, limits the undue influence. About all these things it talked about, right? Then the most importantly, we got the Law Commission of India 2018 in its 170th report. 170th report. So under this particular report, it has talked about particularly about the one nation, one election. How it drafted simultaneous holding all direct election in the country, beginning from Panchayat up to Lok Sabha within a time period of a single year. So the Law Commission of India in its 170th report clearly talked about the one nation, one election. So for sure you should mention this thing. In 2018 this report was compiled, and then obviously we are very much aware of that in the September 2023 only Ramnath Kovind committee was established, right? At that same point of time we got that, if you remember, the session was conducted after the G20, and the Nari Shakti Adhiniyam was also passed. So at that point of time only we appointed this high powered committee, that is Ramnath Kovind committee, report on the simultaneous polls, okay, and it recommended for one nation, one election. And we are aware of that cabinet nod has been given to the one nation, one election. So you can say that just before 2-3 days before the exam we were having news related to the one nation, one election, and we got the question, right? Can we say that? Definitely. Okay. So these are the committees. Okay. Now again we will be looking into the question. So what is the question? Examine the need for electoral reforms is suggested by various committees. So what you have mentioned till now, we have looked into the committees, okay, but how exactly one should start? Okay, so in the introduction part you can start with the current affairs. You can talk about that, the recently Prime Minister has talked about, mooted the idea of simultaneous election, the one nation, one election. So that kind of intro you can start. After that you will be talking about the committees, and then you will be talking about the pros and cons of the one nation, one election. I mean to say, we will be explaining the one nation, one election, like what it is, benefit it will be providing, what consequences it will be having, right? So let's look into that now. So you see that if we will be having one nation, one election principle, then first of all it will be cost effective, because again and again differently we are not supposed to conduct elections. Then less election fatigue, because we are aware of when the elections are being conducted, then at that point of time so much of machinery is being deployed. The ITBP people, the CRPF people, they are being deployed for the election duty. So isliye we are talking about that less election fatigue will be there, right? Then after that, time efficiency, we will be able to save the time. We generally used to say that cost and the time will be saved, right? Then we have the model code of conduct. So in what reference I have mentioned the model code of conduct here? Because if we will have this one nation, one election, then every time our country will not be subjected to some or the other model code of conduct, right? Because we are aware of currently also that the people are some or the other state are subjected to the MCC, like in Haryana, okay, the elections are going on, so we are having the model code of conduct. So हम ये बोल रहे हैं that if model code of conduct will be there, then there will be the major decisions will not be taken. So can we say that developmental walk will be hampering? So because of that we are highlighting, okay. So model of code of conduct problem will be there. Then robust governance. that we will be able to focus on the long term policies. We will not be just subjected to the outcomes of the result, or the elections are coming, so because of that we are taking certain measures. It will not be like that, but every time we will be having the long term agenda, that is, it will be bringing about the robust governance in the country. Then there will be some challenges also. So these challenges you can see, it will be reducing the accountability. How exactly? Because we are aware of that during the time of election, generally the politician used to visit, generally the politician used to be accountable to the people. Okay, so when elections will be taking place after every 5 years, then certainly we can say it may be reducing the accountability, because those politicians will be very free and they will be thinking elections are not coming as of now in a very current near future, so let's not talk about the accountability, let's not care about the people's welfare, right? So in that context we are saying, when elections will be taking place in the once in a 5 year, it may be leading towards the reduced accountability. Then dilution of local issues. This is also called as the hijacking of local issues. How exactly? This is why this is I'm highlighting this, because we are aware of that when we are having the general elections, right? So at that point of time, what kind of atmosphere we used to have? That very less focus on the local issues. What are the problems of that particular issues? But ultimately people will be focusing on the national issues, the general elections people will be focusing on. So by that logic we are commenting on that it may be diluting or hijacking the local issues. National issues will be more important. Okay. Then we have the imbalance of power. Imbalance of power, I mean to say, with respect to the state and the center. So there will be disturbance, balance will be disturbed, that kind of power that we have provided. For example, we have the 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution, which provides for various lists. So that kind of imbalance may be there when the state, the kind of elections that will be taking place once in a 5 year. The central government will become all powerful, right? Then undermining federalism. So one nation, one election may be undermining the federalism. How? Because the definition of federalism is division of power, that there exists the two authorities. The national government will be different, the state governments will be different, and they will be exercising their powers differently. Okay, but when we are conducting elections simultaneously, although there will be separate election for the state election, but when we are having the election at same point of time, then the idea of having the separate state, having the separate government may be diluting under the big name that is called as the center. Because the kind of passion people used to have for the general election, those in that wave we can say the issues will be diluting, local issues will be diluting. So by that logic we can say there may be problem for the federalism. Okay, so these are the benefits, these are the challenges that we may be getting out of the one nation one election. Okay, so what you will be suggesting out of this? Now you cannot conclude abruptly, so you will be concluding in a very holistic manner that one nation one election is not a new idea. The simultaneous elections were taking place in our country till 1967. So this time also one nation one election we cannot just avoid, we can go with it, right? Provided all the stakeholders are taken into consideration, all the constitution norms we are taking into the consideration. Okay, and we are very concerned about the kind of federal polity that we are having. We are very concerned about the local issues that every corner of India is having. If the kind of election that we will be having, the kind of mechanism that we will be following, if these kind of things will be there, then no issues with that. Definitely we can go with the simultaneous election. I hope the idea is very clear. I hope the idea is very clear and it is making good sense. it is making very good sense that conclusion should be very holistic, very futuristic. You will be suggesting that taking all the stakeholders on board, and definitely we can go for the simultaneous elections. Okay, and definitely we have talked about the positives and the negatives. So the futuristic, the very balanced kind of conclusion you will be adding, and that way you will be ending this question, right? Then we have the next question in front of us. So by looking into this question, I was highlighting that certainly we cannot say that question paper was easy. How? Because looking into this, what kind of feeling you will be having? Lok Adalat, I know. Arbitration tribunal, I know. But have you compared them? Because more or less, when it comes to the ADR, that is alternate dispute resolution mechanisms, we used to think that they will be having more or less same kind of thing. Have you ever thought of comparing? So that is the problem with the question paper, that here you are supposed to compare. So that may be bothering you. Okay, so let's have a look into. So what else we are supposed to do in this question? Explain and distinguish between Lok Adalat, arbitration tribunal, whether they entertain civil as well as criminal cases. So first of all, we are supposed to explain and distinguish this Lok Adalat and arbitration tribunal. Then the next question is being added, entertain the civil as well as cases, whether they used to entertain or not, right? So first of all, how we should approach this question? First of all, we should be explaining the alternate dispute resolution. Okay, that you can see, it refers to the means by which disputes are settled outside the traditional courts, outside the traditional judiciary, like the regular courts, the High Court and the Supreme Court and the other district courts. Out of that we are suggesting. Okay, so in India, models of ADR include the arbitration, negotiation, mediation and Lok Adalats. Okay, so you gave this brief introduction about the ADRs, right? Just after that, these definitions may be long, but very briefly you will be explaining the Lok Adalat and you will be explaining the arbitration. Okay, so that is what you are supposed to do, and this is very important that you are mentioning this particular law, that is National Legal Service Authority Act 1987. Popularly it is called as NALSA. Okay, so you will talk about the Lok Adalat, what are they, and you will talk about the arbitration tribunal. So what are these Lok Adalats? Aimed at resolving the disputes amicably, this is very important, and swiftly. They function through the mediation and conciliation involving the community. So this is what the Lok Adalats are. If we are looking into the arbitration tribunal, then we have the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. The parties agrees to submit dispute to the arbitrator, and here for a binding decision will be there, and the process is structured compared to the Lok Adalats. So here we will be having the structured process in case of arbitration tribunal. Okay, so what is the broad idea? That we are having the, first of all we are defining the ADRs, then we are defining the Lok Adalats, then the arbitration tribunals. Okay, now we are supposed to explain and distinguish. So here you see the distinguish, already you explained, now you are distinguishing the Lok Adalats and the arbitration, the difficult kind of thing. And earlier part also was difficult, because I mentioned that we used to take the Lok Adalats and all the arbitration tribunals in the similar way. That is what we perceive. Okay, anyways, so Lok Adalat we are comparing now. They are formal and less rigid, but arbitration tribunal will be formal, structured legal framework. Okay, and after that we'll have based on consensus and negotiation, then we'll have based on legal principles and evidences they will be. Okay, here we have non-judicial, presided over by judge or a legal expert, but they will be having the judicial authorities. Okay, then this is very important, like they will be primarily dealing with the civil and compounded criminal cases. Why this is important? because if you remember, in the question itself, they have mentioned whether they are dealing with the criminal cases or not. So from here you are getting that idea that they are dealing with the civil as well as the compounded criminal cases, right? Then mainly civil disputes, including commercial and contractual, they do not typically handle criminal cases. Okay, so that is what you are supposed to highlight. Last part of the question is highlighting. Okay, then decisions are not legally binding, decision will be legally binding, and then we have generally low cost and quick, but here costly and lengthy process will be there in case of the arbitration tribunals. So I hope the idea is very clear, and you have explained, you have distinguished, and at the very end you will be adding that these kind of the case with respect to the civil and criminal proceedings, like what will be the scenario with respect to dealing with the civil cases and what will be the scenario with respect to the dealing with the criminal cases. Okay, so this is about this particular question. Now this is very analytical kind of question. The important question again we have, and we can say this is core polity question. Rest of the questions we can say related to governance, right, some or the other way, because we cannot particularly or concretely say that this is the polity question or the governance question, because there is so much of overlap, everything is governance, right? So this is core polity question. Now just have a look into this. Growth of cabinet system has practically resulted in marginalization of parliamentary supremacy. Elucidate. Okay, so here you are like explain based on the particular evidences, right? Growth of cabinet system has practically resulted into the marginalization of the parliamentary sovereignty. Okay, so first of all we should have idea what is this cabinet system, how it is increasing, how it is being emphasized, and then we should have also idea about what do we meant by this parliamentary sovereignty, right? So cabinet, here you should consider it as the executive branch of the state, because it is someone who is responsible for taking major policy decisions, right? And what is that legislature? Legislature is for there to discuss the bills, to formulate the bill, to vote on the bills, right? To legislate the bill. Like procedure they will be following in the House of People, and they will be accordingly passing the bill or not passing the bill or discussing it like that. Okay. And there are so other parliamentary tools also, like 0 hour, question hour, debates and discussions and all those things. So they will be belonging to the legislature. And certainly when we are talking about the parliamentary sovereignty, meaning that whether the Parliament of India is completely free to make any kind of legislation as per its will or not, or some authority is above it and some or the other way it is influencing, or it is curbing, or it is dominating over the supremacy of Parliament, right? So in that context we need to look into this question. Now we are aware of that, especially in these last 10 years we have been witnessing a very strong government with the brutal majority. When we are having this much of government, like when it is having all kind of majority, more than 300 seats in the Lok Sabha, this time they are not having. Okay, so definitely there are chances that executive will be very strong and they will be able to exercise more power in comparison to the previous government or in comparison to the present day government that we are having after 4th June 2024. They will be trying to come up with more ordinances to make laws. Okay, they may be disqualifying opposition members. Less scope for discussion will be there because government is all powerful. Okay, so in that context this question is being asked that executive is becoming more powerful. We are having a powerful prime minister. So growth of cabinet system Now the cabinet is more important. They are taking majority of decision, right? So now we need to look into. So first of all, in the introduction part, you will be giving simple scenario that I mentioned, that growth of the cabinet, how it is impacting. So you can just talk about some current scenario, like you can simply mention whatever I mentioned just now, that nowadays, like in the previous last 10 years, there has been debate all the time that government having majority, too much of majority in the house is more powerful. It may be not listening to the voices of the representative, the MPs we can say particularly, or the house of people. It may be undermining that. Okay, so some that kind of introduction you can provide. Okay, only 2-3 line introduction. It should not be going beyond 20 or 30 words. That's all, because it's just a 10 marker. Okay. After that, as I used to suggest this always, that you should be using the question language as the heading. Okay, so here we made a heading, argument for marginalization of parliamentary sovereignty due to growth of cabinet system. Okay, so we are just writing and we are making arguments in favor of the statement, that it is saying the growth of cabinet has led to the marginalization of parliamentary sovereignty. So we are arguing in favor of that. How exactly? Concentration of power in the executive. If the growth of cabinet will be there, it is being said, so we are just confirming to that, yes, the concentration of power in the executive. Now power is more concentrated on the executive. For example, during the COVID, the question hour was suspended. During the COVID, so many ordinances government came up with, and there were bills which we were not referring to the standing committees, and they were just passed. So concentration of power in the executive. So iska matlab, the kind of statement that the question is making is being validated, because I mentioned you that executive is becoming more powerful. Okay? So this is the first logic. Then after that we have party system and whip mechanism. We are aware of that in case of parliament, or for that matter in the state legislature also, every party will be having the whip, and whip is a person who will be representative of the party, we can say, who will be guiding all the members of that particular political party in that particular house. So this is the whip, and suppose that particular political party is going to vote in a particular issue tomorrow, right? So if any member of that particular political party is not following the instructions given by the whip, then that person may be disqualified from the political party. So now by this logic we are again conforming to the same fact, that yes, this is evidencing, this is witnessing that yes, the whip kind of thing that we are having, or the kind of party system that we have evolved over a period of time, it is just providing for the compromise on the what do you say, the sovereignty of the parliament. Because यहाँ पे whip की बात माननी पड़ेगी ना. It is not about that your will, it is not about the will of the member of the parliament. For example, a particular MP has been elected from the state of Andhra Pradesh. Now that MP wants to vote for a particular bill. For example, government is coming up with the uniform civil code. Then that particular MP somehow is not supporting the government. But that MP cannot do that if his party is not willing for that. So meaning that ultimately it is compromising on the sovereignty of parliament. It is compromising on the will of that member. SSC CGL previous year question paper start कर दो. That we will be doing later on. अभी आज UPSC मेंस का पेपर डिस्कस हो रहा है. We will be doing that. ठीक है. So I hope the idea is very clear. Then we have the decreasing role in law making. Okay. So major economic reforms like 1991 liberalization, were executive decisions limited to the parliamentary involvement? So we are taking the executive decision, right? And it is not the decision which are taking in the concurrence with the parliament. No. But these are the executive decisions. So again we can say the executive, the more executive is becoming powerful, more the parliamentary sovereignty is being compromised. Then we have delegated legislation. So ordinance making power in India allows executive to bypass the parliament on the urgent situations. So definitely these kind of issue also is creating a problem with respect to the parliamentary sovereignty. Okay? So here we have added some points which are favoring the statement given in the question. Now we have other argument that we are supposed to make. Argument against marginalization of parliamentary sovereignty due to the growth of cabinet system. Okay? Now we are making the counter arguments that no, it is not like that. If the powerful government is there, if the executive is strong, then it is not always true that it will be necessarily compromising on the sovereignty of parliament. No, it is not like that. Okay. How? Parliamentary oversight and the committee. That parliamentary oversight will be there, and we are having so many committees to look after that. So necessarily we cannot say that yes, the parliamentary sovereignty is being compromised. These things are still existing. It is bringing about the parliamentary oversight and the committee. Okay. Then debates and question hour, they are still existing. So how we can say that executive is becoming more powerful, so it is necessarily compromising on the sovereignty of parliament, right? So although the kind of example that I gave earlier, that the question hour was suspended in July 2021 during the COVID times. Okay. So that was the very extreme kind of example, but otherwise definitely we can say, since the debates, the question hour, the discussions, and so many other parliamentary tools, for example, the no confidence motion, for example, the censure motion, and so on, right? Like in case of budget passing, we have the policy cut motion, token cut motions, right? That. So we cannot say that growth of cabinet system is necessarily, compromising on the sovereignty of the parliament. Okay? Next, we have the collective responsibility. What is the meaning of this? That COM, that the Council of Ministers will be collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. So if it is collectively responsible, then how we can say that it is compromising on the parliamentary sovereignty? So again, it is not validating. Then we have the legislative powers of parliament. So parliament is having so much of legislative powers. What are the legislative powers? That there will be certain procedures, the bill will be passed with simple majority, separate special majority, type 1, type 2, then special majority type 3, and the kind of bill that we will be having in the house, then accordingly that process will be followed. Okay? And everything will be done as per the process. Even if the speaker is taking decision, it will be also following the rules and regulations of the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha respectively. Okay? So legislative powers of parliament with respect to lawmaking, looking into these points, definitely we can say it is nowhere compromising on the sovereignty of the parliament. Okay? So I hope this question is making good sense, and it was required that you are discussing both the angles. So आपको एक बार question फिर से दिखा देते हैं. When it is talking about the elucidate, so because of that we provided some concrete data, concrete facts, I mean to say data का तो यहाँ पे क्या ही scope होगा, and then we commented. That is what the meaning of elucidate is, and we covered all the aspect related to the question. ठीक है? Next we have is a very straightforward question, this much. इसको हम easy question बोल सकते हैं definitely without any doubt. So question is about duty of Comptroller and Auditor General is not merely to ensure expenditure, the legality of expenditure, but also propriety. Okay? So यहाँ पे first of all the question should be making good sense to us. Okay? So हमारा पहला इसका aspect क्या है? That we should be aware of the duties of CAG. What are the duties of CAG? To bring about the audits of various government offices, the various government expenditures, right? So first of all we should be aware of. One. The two, we are supposed to understand why the question is saying it also its propriety. Propriety here means to have the moral values, to have the responsibility, to have the accountability. It is not that you just conducted the audit and whether the amount that was allocated for that scheme, whether that has been used, how that has been used. It is not that you are just calculating on numbers, but it is also the calculation basis on responsibility. Okay, and you are analyzing the justice, you are analyzing the reasonability of that particular expenditure. You are understanding that whether there was a need for that or not, whether that amount that we provided was efficiently used or not. All that the CAG is supposed to consider. So that is what the question is asking. Okay, so आप easily समझ सकते हो what should be the the structure for this answer. First of all, you will be writing about the constitutional provisions with respect to CAG. सबसे अच्छा होगा अगर constitutional provisions लिखोगे, ठीक है. So duties of CAG यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है directly, but यहाँ पे हम एक introduction add करेंगे. In introduction you will be writing about that article 148 of the Indian Constitution provides for the office of CAG. It is responsible for the audit. Okay, then so we have this. Then so after introduction you will be talking about certain duties of Comptroller and Auditor General. Very static part of this answer, very static part. इसमें आपको कुछ भी extra नहीं लिखना है, only same things which you would have learned from the Lakshmikants, right? So first of all you are writing about the constitutional mandate. Article 148 of the Indian Constitution, making it constitutional authority responsible for auditing the government's account. ठीक है, its primary duty is to audit expenditure from consolidated fund of India, state, union territory to ensure the transparency and accountability. तो आप सिर्फ basic function लिख रहे हो what the CAG is responsible for. ठीक है, very simple question, I will again say. ठीक है, then you will be talking about ensuring legality of expenditure. तो आप expenditure की legality को भी ensure करना है, that is also the duty. Auditing of transactions, that is also the duty. So you are just explaining the duty in a very static manner. ठीक है, then after that propriety audit. So this is the other aspect of the question. Like after explaining the duties of CAG, I hope you will be understanding that, वो आप आराम से कर लोगे. Then propriety audit. ठीक है, so यहाँ पे क्या बोल रहे हैं, refers to ethical and judicious use of funds. ठीक है, so this is the crux. इसके direction में you are supposed to write answer that CAG role is not limited to checking whether the expenditure is legally correct, but it is also justified, it is economical, reasonable and efficient. CAG is also supposed to do this. ठीक है, so सबसे पहले introduction, brief introduction about the CAG, what is CAG. Then after that you are writing about the duties of CAG. Then propriety वाला, how propriety is important, what is propriety, all this you will be explaining. Okay, and after that you will be adding a conclusion to end your answer. And conclusion में आप लिखोगे highlighting the importance of propriety, that since the CAG is having very important role to play in the democratic setup, then it is very important that it is performing the propriety duty. Okay, that it is actually with the open mind, and it is sensible office. It is understanding what is the need and where the where the public money should be spent on. So emphasizing on the direction of propriety, you will be concluding your answer. ठीक है, so I hope it is making good sense. Now we'll move on to the next question. So next question is, this is again very simple question, because इस question में भी you will find कि we are not having any complexities which may be bothering us, right? So आप देख सकते हो, analyze the role of local bodies in providing good governance. Okay, I hope we are aware of the features of good governance: transparency, accountability, inclusivity and responsibility, right? And equity, all those things. So वो हमें पता होना चाहिए. So analyze the role of local bodies and in the good governance at local levels, ठीक है, discuss the pros and cons of merging rural local bodies with urban local bodies. So here also we are having the first part and the second part of the question. We are having two parts. So first part is very easy, because if you will be aware of, through the local bodies we provided for the decentralization, that is 73rd and the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, ठीक है. So they provided for the decentralization. When we will be having decentralization, then definitely some or the other way we are giving effect to the governance, good governance. How? Because after having 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, we will be providing opportunities for the people to participate in the governance process. तो हमारे पास participation आ गया. Now, when we will be having the local government, people will be more, the elected representatives will be more accountable to the people. Now people can ask question to those people. We are not getting the clean drinking water. Sanitation problem is there in the locality. So now those kind of questions can be asked. So explaining the features of 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, you will be establishing this fact that it has provided for the good governance. You can also write that if these bodies are providing the 1/3 of the reservation to the women, then certainly we can say it is providing for the participation of women, so the good governance is taking place. It is providing for 1/3 of reservation to the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes, so the good governance is taking place. So all the features that we have, आप 4-5 तो at least लिखेंगे, and you will be explaining about how the local bodies are providing for the good governance. Number 1. Number 2, discuss the pros and cons of merging. So ये थोड़ा नया है, and it is something which generally people do not use, ठीक है. आप न्यूज़पेपर अगर रेगुलर बेसिस पे पढ़ोगे, then you will have point, कोई डाउट नहीं उस पर. बट अगर थोड़ा कम अपडेटेड रहेंगे लोग तो इसके बारे में हो सकता है आइडिया ना हो, ठीक है. सो आई होप दिस पॉइंट इज वेरी क्लियर. नाउ हियर वी हैव द प्रॉज एंड कॉन्स फॉर द मर्जिंग लोकल बॉडीज, ठीक है. I hope idea is very clear. We are talking about the PRIs merging with the urban local bodies, ULBs, ठीक है. So pros क्या होगा? Benefit for peripheral villages. Merger will help peripheral villages to develop as rural laws and cannot shape urban growth sustainability. Okay. So if merger will be there, then we can say integration will be there. It will be easier for the rural people because their own government will be there in the urban areas also. It will be helping them, ठीक है. So first point, help entire settlement to emerge as homogeneous entity, integrating urban planning. The same continuation of that point, administrative efficacy will be there because separately we are not supposed to, same IAS officer is not supposed to look after the urban local bodies and the Panchayati Raj institutions, but we can bring about the administrative efficacy because the objective is very clear. They are functioning in an integrated manner, right? Then economics of scale, financial efficiency will be there. We are supposed to allocate funds in a very objective manner, ठीक है. Then addressing the rural urban migration, so ये rural urban migration होता है वो भी कम हो जाएगा because integrated system will be there. The rural people will be having the sense of belongingness, so it will not be exactly, we can say that rural urban migration will be taking place up to large extent, ठीक है. Then there will be some problems also if we are going for this merger. Tax rise for the rural people. Rural people are not having too much taxes to pay as of now, but when they will be coming to the urban areas, there will be so much of taxes. That will be a problem. Okay. So one, then employment issues. Villages not get benefit under the MGNREGA, ठीक है. So हमारे पास MGNREGA for the rural employment, but when they will be merged, so villager will not be getting the employment. That issue will be there. Loss of administrative approachability due to the centralization. So like in the rural, for the rural people it will be a problem because centralization will be taking place, so they may be beyond their reach. Then village leaders often see mergers result into loss of political power. Okay. So village people, less aware people, when we will be providing for these kind of merger, तो उनको तो ऐसा ही लगेगा ना दैट द अर्बन काउंटर पार्ट विल बी डोमिनेटिंग द थिंग्स. तो मर्जर होना चाहिए, बट शुड बी taking into the consideration of the issues of rural people. And now you see that out of these conclusions only we got the idea about the conclusion. आप conclusion कैसा लिखोगे? Considering this pros that yes, it is a good idea, the merger can be a good solution, it will be providing for the above sad benefits, but it should be done by taking care of all the issues involved, as rural people may be at the disadvantage, so it should be taken care of that we are addressing all the issues involved, then only we are going for the merger. So that is what we can suggest. Now the next we have is this question is also more or less straightforward. So poverty and malnutrition create a vicious cycle adversely affecting human capital formation. ठीक है, it is both of them, poverty and malnutrition, creating vicious cycle adversely affecting human capital and formation. What steps can be taken to break the cycle? ठीक है, so first of all we will be introducing about the poverty and malnutrition. ठीक है, so आप poverty and malnutrition के बारे में explain करोगे. You can start with the data. You can talk about the prevailing issues, how the poverty and the malnutrition are the problem, right? You will talk about that. So here you see that poverty and malnutrition creates a vicious cycle adversely affecting the human capital formation. ठीक है, अब आपको थोड़ा ये सोचना पड़ेगा that poverty and malnutrition, how they will be creating the vicious cycle with respect to the affecting the human capital formation. ठीक है, and आपको पता होना चाहिए human capital formation कैसे होगी. So human capital formation will be there because of the education, because of the health, because of the employment, because of the people's participation in the governance, awareness. अगर ये सब होगा, so we will be having huge capital formation. But the poverty and malnutrition creates a vicious cycle adversely affecting the human capital. If poverty will be there, malnutrition will be there, people will not be able to get the education, people will be able to get the better healthcare facilities, so it will be creating the vicious cycle. That means not education, more poor, and again we are roaming around and that particular circle. Okay, and ultimately it is failing to develop the human capital. ठीक है, so this is the one. What steps can be taken to break the cycle? So this is a simple question. ठीक है, so you first of all you are explaining here that they are interconnected issues and detrimental impact on the capital formation. अगर poverty and malnutrition होगा, detrimental impact will be there. Vicious cycle perpetuates poor health, limited education, reduced productivity, ultimately hindering the economic development. This kind of introduction you can provide. ठीक है, then vicious cycle for poverty and malnutrition. So first of all we are looking into impact of human capital formation. So reduced productivity होगी, education deficiency होगी, so definitely it is having direct impact on the human capital formation. After that we will have the poor health outcomes will be there. Okay, and intergenerational impact. Intergenerational impact meaning that if your current generation is poor and malnourished, it is having the malnutrition also, then your kids will be also facing same kind of issues. So that's why we are saying those kind of issues will be transferring to other generation. Intergenerational impact will be there. Okay, so because of all these reasons we are saying it will be having the malnutrition and the poverty will be having the adverse impact on the human capital formation. Okay, so all these things was simple because anyone can guess like what will be the impacts of the poverty and the malnutrition. Anyone can guess, right? So we have the what steps we can take to break the cycle. Okay, so nutritional intervention. For example, we have come up with the midday meal scheme to feed the people coming to the schools, right? an integrated child development scheme where we are actually looking for all round development of children's. So these kind of schemes we have come up with. So what steps needed to break the cycle? We are suggesting the midday meal scheme. We can suggest the ICDS, and then educational and skill development. So universal education we should provide. For example, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan we came up with. A skill development program we are supposed to come up with, so that people will be enriched, people will be able to get the education, then they will be able to make themselves out of helping them getting out of the vicious cycle of poverty and malnutrition. Okay? Social safety nets, direct cash transfer हम अपना सकते हैं, already we are doing that. Employment schemes we can provide, for example MDA and RGA, right? Community involvement, self-help groups. So already we are having so much of self-help groups working in the country, so we can further empower the self-help groups so that people will be empowered, especially like if the women are involved, women are empowered, which are helping themselves in bringing about or avoiding the poverty and malnutrition. So these are the solutions that we can provide in this particular question. Okay? So, and accordingly on the same lines you will be concluding that in order to break this vicious cycle, some futuristic measures are required as we suggested, and it can be done with the people's participation, it can be done with better data collection, it can be done with the help of proper assessment, what are the reasons behind this poverty and malnutrition, and accordingly we can serve people. Okay? So आप एक holistic conclusion, again futuristic and positive conclusion you will be adding here also. Then the next question that we have here is, now it is little logical, little intellectual question we can say. Okay, although familiar one again, and in the beginning if you remember I added that the problem with this question paper, particularly with respect to some questions, that questions are looking very familiar to us. Article 21 every day we used to read, we used to talk about, but जब आप क्वेश्चन को अंदर पढ़ोगे, so you will be getting certain difficulties. ठीक है? So आप देखिए क्वेश्चन, right to privacy is intrinsic to life and personal liberty. Okay, like it is very much associated with the life and personal liberty and is inherently protected under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. It is inherently protected under the Indian Constitution. This is what is being said. That means it is part of that. Okay, explain. That is what we are explaining. In this reference, discuss the law relating to DNA testing of child in a womb to establish its paternity. So the next part, other part is a problem, because generally we do not study all these things, although these kind of new technologies are very much prevalent. So one should know all these things, having understanding about the current affairs. Okay? So first of all, as the question itself is separately asking that it is intrinsic and is inherently protected under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. So clearly you are supposed to talk about the right to privacy under Article 21. ठीक है? अब right to privacy, earlier it was not available. So because of that we are supposed to explain that. ठीक है? So initially Article 21 only protected against arbitrary state action and has since been broadened to include many implied rights including the privacy. ठीक है? So initially it was not available, but over a period of time we have added so many rights, and one is the right to privacy. Okay? So that is what you will be explaining. Then after that, this is most important case to mention here, that is KS Puttaswamy Union of Indian case 2017. In this case Supreme Court clearly highlighted right to privacy as fundamental right under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. ठीक है? तो आपने पहले यहाँ पे इंट्रोडक्शन में आर्टिकल 21 को ही एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं, दैट इट इज अबाउट द राइट टू लाइफ एंड पर्सनल लिबर्टी. ठीक है? आप उसको एक्सप्लेन करेंगे, देन आफ्टर दैट After that you will be talking about this particular case and or this about this incident also, or this fact also, that earlier it was not available, but over a period of time the horizon of Article 21 has been broadened and the rights like the right to privacy have been added. And in this KS Puttaswamy case, Supreme Court clearly mentioned that right to privacy is a fundamental right under Article 21. ठीक है, तो आप देख लीजिए, privacy is intrinsic to life and personal liberty inherently protected under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. ठीक है, तो इस चीज को एक्सप्लेन करने के लिए you will be required to add some argument in favor of this particular right terminologies, intrinsic to life and personal liberty. So you can say that since the Article 21 is about right to life and personal liberty, okay, right to life and personal liberty, so as we through various Supreme Court cases we learned that right to life is not just about being alive. Right to life includes the right to have the meaningful life, dignified life. So on the similar line, while you will be explaining about all these things, on the similar lines you can talk about that the right to privacy is also one part of the liberty or one part of meaningful life, because without privacy it may not be possible to enjoy the dignified or the meaningful life. ठीक है, तो आप जब ऐसे explain करेंगे, so that will be matching the demand of this statement. Privacy is intrinsic to life and personal liberty and is inherently protected under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. ठीक है, आप बोल सकते हो कि although it was not available but it was already available, because the meaning of right to life and personal liberty is so big. It is so big. Right to remain silent, right to walk anywhere across the globe, right to marry a person of your choice, right to privacy, all these things should be available under Article 21. Right to information, right to education, because it was added in the appendage part of Article 21A, right to education, 21A, because of that only, because Article 21 ambit is so big, तो आप ऐसा कुछ context establish करेंगे and you will be fulfilling. ठीक है, then after that the second part, so law relating to DNA testing in a child in the womb to establish paternity, so हम ये information provide करानी पड़ेगी. It is very factual and it is supposed to be provided. So DNA testing is often used to use in cases of paternity disputes. तो आपको पहले ये लिखना पड़ेगा इस तरीके की information. Then you will provide some cases. For example, we have Bhavani Prasad Jaina, Convener Secretary, Odisha State Commission for Women, right? Supreme Court here mentioned that DNA testing should not be used as the routine procedure. The DNA testing should not be used as the routine procedure, but without the right to privacy of the parties involved. So Supreme Court clearly mentioned in this thing that DNA testing something, it should not be like you are using very frequently, every now and then you are using this. It should not be the case. Okay, so that is what you are highlighting. Then you will talk about this PCPNDT Act 1994. Okay, so this PCPNDT Act 1994 talks about that including DNA testing for purpose of determining paternity are heavily regulated. They need to be heavily regulated when we are talking about the this DNA testing kind of thing, right? So this is quite factual, and this is the second part of the question was little problematic, we can say, because you should have understanding what are the provisions with respect to the DNA testing in our country. Okay, now we have going forward, we have next question to talk about, and this question is, we are having, what changes has the union government recently introduced in the domain of center state relation? ठीक है, so recently here does not mean that it is they are asking about very recent, like in some months. No, We are talking about quite some time recently, like in some past few years they are talking about. Okay, so what changes union government recently introduced in the domain of center state relations? ठीक है, suggest measure to adopt to build trust between the center and state and for strengthening federalism. ठीक है, so there are two ways, two kinds of measures you are supposed to explain, and you should, you know, it is very important that you are explaining the things very separately. Okay, that how the center state relations can be brought about and how we can brought about the features of federalism. ठीक है, and so it is about having information, that you should have information कि हमने क्या क्या किया है recently, for example the GST. ठीक है, and उसके बाद it is easy, you can talk about this, you can actually provide information with respect to the second part of the question and the third part of the question. ठीक है, so introduction में आप क्या करेंगे? Since the question is directly about the center state relation, so what should be done? बताइए. Definitely here we should provide the constitutional provisions. ठीक है, so first of all we will provide the constitutional provisions. ठीक है, so what you are providing? Part 11 of the Indian Constitution. Under this article there is this is 264, but it will be 245, right? 245 to 293, and it is covering the legislative, the administrative and the financial. All kind of relations have been explained under the part 11 of the Indian Constitution from article 245 to 293. ठीक है, so this you can provide at the very first, at the very beginning, that is the introduction. ठीक है, so center state relation के बारे में you are providing the constitutional mandate, constitutional provisions that we are having. ठीक है, after that these are all the recent changes recently government what has done. So quickly we will look into implementation of GST, changes in the financial relation. 15th फाइनेंस कमीशन की रिकमेंडेशन हुई है that it will be reducing the state share. उसके बाद farm laws, they will be, you know, sparking protest, raising question about the center state relations. यहाँ पे सेंटर का डोमिनेशन हो जाएगा स्टेट की डोमेन में. Amendment in disaster management, during COVID pandemic time में center will be, you know, penalizing the having autonomy, and then use of article 356. ठीक है, so all these recently government has brought about some changes. तो आपको ये इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोवाइड करानी पड़ेगी एज द क्वेश्चन इज क्लियरली टॉकिंग अबाउट व्हाट चेंजेस हैज यूनियन गवर्नमेंट रिसेंटली इंट्रोड्यूस्ड इन द डोमेन ऑफ सेंटर स्टेट रिलेशन. ठीक है, सो डेफिनेटली जीएसटी शुड बी कमिंग, डेफिनेटली द फार्मर्स लॉ विल बी कमिंग. तो आपको बस प्रोवाइड कराना है व्हाट चेंजेस हैज बीन प्रोवाइडेड, राइट. आफ्टर दैट हियर वी हैव द measures to build trust between center and states. Measures to build trust between center and state. Next part will be about the federalism. ठीक है, so यहाँ पे क्या करेंगे? We will be promoting the idea of cooperative federalism. ठीक है, that is we will be having the federalism, but also there will be large scale cooperation existing. This is the agenda of Niti Aayog also. So that is what we are supposed to provide in order to bring about better center state relation, what is question is asking, right. Then next is ensuring fiscal federalism, that actual devolution of powers with respect to the finances are taking place. That is what we are supposed to do. That is what the way we can bring about the better financial center state relations. ठीक है, then we have the regular consultation. How we can brought about the regular consultation? How we can brought about the regular consultation? So we can brought about the regular consultation by way of interstate council, by way of zonal councils. हमारे पास zonal councils हैं, हमारे पास interstate council है. So through that we should be able to try bring about the regular consultation, strengthening role for the interstate council, transparent governance, resolving regional disparities, decentralization of power. All these suggestions you can provide in case of bringing about the better center-state relations. Okay? After that, the question's last part is, you are supposed to provide measures, okay, to strengthen federalism in India. Federalism कैसे करेंगे? So clear division of power, making sense, very simple to talk about. आपको पहले से भी पता है ये चीजें. These are the very basic kind of things. Strengthening the Rajya Sabha power, enhancing judicial role because it will be in a better position to intervene. Okay, institutional reforms. Okay, the way our institutions are working, we are supposed to change according to the time and need. Empowering local bodies, flexibility in policy implementation, because that policy may not be suitable to a particular state. So we are talking about the flexibility, and then we have addressing grievances through the mediation. Now we have the next question. Okay? So this is the next question that we are having, and this is our second last question. So this question is about, you can read that you are supposed to explain the reasons for growth of public interest litigation, PILs. As a result of it, has the Indian Supreme Court emerged as the world's most powerful judiciary? Okay? Just because of the growth of PIL, Supreme Court of India has become the most powerful judiciary. Okay? Most powerful judiciary, yes. So first of all, it is making clear sense that explain the reasons for the growth of public interest litigation. Simply आपको PIL explain करना है in the introduction, ठीक है? Because we are supposed to address the keywords in the question, so that examiner will be getting idea that yes, you are understanding and you are making the things very clear from the beginning. So आप keyword को यहाँ पे explain कर दोगे, ठीक है? So first of all, PIL you will explain, and after that you will talk about reasons for growth of public interest litigation. So reason क्या होंगे? Judicial activism. Because people are not now people are aware. People know what are their rights. People know how to bring about the benefits. People know how to make the authorities accountable. So हमारे पास क्या हो रहा है? Judicial activism हो रहा है. Okay. So judicial activism होगा. That means you are aware of the judicial aspect, and so you will be resorting to the PIL kind of thing. Okay. Access to justice. Access to justice हो रहा है. Better transportation facilities, or we can say better online platform. Prevalency of the internet is providing better access to the judiciary, we can say, or better awareness is providing for better access. So people are becoming aware. Things are connected nowadays. So we are having the access to justice. Then we have societal concern. People are societal concern, like if in my locality inequality is there is crime against women, and there are sanitation problem, there are transportation facilities problem. So I will be maybe resorting to the PILs. ठीक है? Then after that, media attention. Media attention बहुत ज़्यादा हो गया है. Any issues will be there. For example, farmers protests were there. So at that point of time, there was so much of media attention. So जब media attention होगा, so PIL will be coming. More PIL will be coming. Then executive and legislative inaction. When the executive and the legislative branch of the states are not functioning well, then at that point of time, we used to have the PILs. PILs will be rising in that context. Okay? Now, has the Indian Supreme Court emerged as world most powerful judiciary due to rise in PIL? So, आप इस point को very carefully how you are supposed to explain. So, these are the parameters, these are the ways how you will be explaining this particular part. So, judicial activism through PIL, it is setting the ground that the Supreme Court will be becoming more powerful. Okay? Because when PIL will be there, the things will be more, we will be transferring the power more to the Supreme Court, because some or the other way The legislature or the executive had failed, they are not able to provide solution, so we are coming up with the judicial activism through the PIL. So it is bringing about the more power to the Supreme Court. Okay? Then expansion of Article 21, that is right to life. How exactly it is strengthening the power of Supreme Court? So it is strengthening the power of Supreme Court by the logic that yesterday, I mean to say in the past, when we were having very limited understanding, the awareness, so at that point of time, there is a possibility that we will be having little narrow meaning of Article 21. Okay? But as we will be proceeding further, as the society will be growing, then at that point of time, there will be different interpretations of Article 21 will be coming. Like the way we discussed about the right to privacy in other question. Okay? So when the society is growing, society is emerging, so new kind of needs are arising. When the new kinds of needs are arising, now the Supreme Court is having more role to play. Yesterday Supreme Court was just dealing with the conforming to the constitutional aspect, we can say. Okay. But now social media platforms are creating new kind of challenges. So Supreme Court is also supposed to take care of those challenges also. So we can say definitely that Supreme Court is having more power because of that. Then role as the guardian of constitution, any issues with respect to the constitution, Supreme Court will be looking into. Then impact of landmark judgments, and then we have addressing government in action, judicial independence, yes, it is important. The conduct of judges cannot be discussed in the parliament. They cannot be removed at any point of time, but by the special majority of the house. All these things are making the powerful Supreme Court powerful. Then we have the global comparisons. So, yes, looking into all these aspects, we can say that PIL has definitely strengthened the Supreme Court power. But जब आपसे पूछा जा रहा है has Supreme Court power has emerged, so up to some large extent you will be agreeing, but आप लिखोगे however it is not that it is doing beyond the law, or it is PIL is all about enhancing the power of Supreme Court. No, it is also about protecting the constitution, the earlier role that it was already providing. Okay? So balanced kind of conclusion you will be adding. I hope it is making good sense. Now we will be moving on to our very last question, and the last question is, discuss India as secular state, okay, and compare with secular principles of US Constitution. Okay? So the question is again very simple, very direct kind of question. So हम सबसे पहले क्या करेंगे यहाँ पे, we will be talking about the Indian secularism. ठीक है? So India is having diverse culture, religious belief, country's constitution guarantees right to freedom of religion and all. So some basic lines you will be adding with respect to the secularism. Okay? Or you can talk about the secularism also directly. That Indian constitution, the secularism has been added in the preamble by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976, and also Article 25 to 28 talks about the secularism, okay, to provide to freedom of religion. So in other words they are providing the secularism. ठीक है? आप इससे भी explain कर सकते हो. Or you can talk about the diversity, and then you can set the ground why you are talking about the secularism. ठीक है? So about the secularism, basic introduction you will be giving, and after that you will be comparing with that of the US Constitution. Okay? So here you can see that we are having the comparison of the Indian Constitution scheme with that of the US Constitution. Okay? So what will be the major differences that the Indian notion of secularism is having with that of rest of the countries, we can say. So Indian notion of secularism is called as the positive notion of secularism, because here the state will not be following the policy of touch me not. No, it will not be following that policy, but हम यहाँ पे क्या करेंगे, we will be treating all the religions equal, and state will be providing equal assistance to all the religions without any discrimination. But in case of US, we will be having the negative notion of secularism, because their state will not be providing any assistance to any kind of religion. So that is called as negative notion of secularism. So that way, this way you can compare that in case of India, the secularism explicitly mentioned in the preamble and constitution, ये हमारे पास clearly mentioned है. But in case of US, secularism implied through the first amendment, no explicit mention term secularism. They are not having explicitly mentioning the term secularism. ठीक है. And next is state maintains equal distance from all the religion and treat all the religion impartially. As I mentioned कि हम positive notion of secularism follow करते हैं, but they will not be following, right? यहाँ पे separation of church and state will be there, and state cannot, the government cannot favor, cannot provide any assistance to any religion. That is what we are having. Then the next we have is Article 25 to 28. So definitely on the similar lines we are commenting that we are having the these articles which are explicitly provided in the constitution, which are talking about the secularism. Okay, but in case of American constitution, you can say that the first amendment guarantees freedom of religion, and it is providing about the prohibiting Congress from making any law related to the secularism. Okay, so I hope the idea is very clear. We will be looking into this question first again. So question was about discuss India's secular state and compare with that of the secular principle of US. So हमने यहाँ पे सबसे पहले Indian secularism की बात की, what kind of secularism we have. Then we talked about certain constitutional provision, that is the preamble, Article 25 to 28, and then we compared the Indian constitution scheme with that of the US constitution scheme. So this is how we are supposed to deal with this question. And with this, I'll be ending this session. I hope you learned from this session a lot. Thank you.
डन, माइक ऑन, डन। शुरू करूं? बोल देना ऐसे। Hello everyone, UPSC 2024, GS paper 1 and 2 had already been conducted, and today I'm here to explain GS paper 2, the governance and international relations part. Now this is Dr. Bijendra Jha, and we will see how many questions have come from governance and how many questions have appeared this time from international relations in GS part paper 2. Now if you see the questions, this time question was moderate, there is no hard and there was no easy, right? If you compare it from the last 2-3 years, one can say the question was little complex and little tricky, right? But it was not so hard, right? It was very easy for those who have gone through their syllabus thoroughly and made some practices. So let's see the questions first, and then we will see how many questions have actually been asked from the governance part or how many questions have been asked from the IR part. Now out of 20 questions that had been asked in GS paper 2, 10 had been asked from governance, right, and international together. Now if you see the next slide, right, now if I see the next slide, right, here is the question, and look at the first question. It is talking about the public charitable trust have the potential to make India's development more inclusive as they relate to certain vital public issue. Now here talking about the public charitable trust. Now it's better if you understand the question first. So it's talking about public charitable trust and have potential. This is the keyword, potential, in India's development, right? More inclusive, right, and related to certain vital issues, public issues. Now what are the vital public issues like health, schooling, right, sanitations, right, eradication of poverty? These are the vital issues in India's development. Now here talking about charitable trust. Now any charitable trust is registered under article under 1982 Charitable Trust Act. So these are the keywords that one should mention in their answer, right? And first to understand the question. Now this was the governance part, right? This question was from the governance. Let's see the another question, and then we will discuss one by one. Now here the doctrine of democratic governance. Now look at the question. It is very much a specific question this time. Doctrine of democratic governance make it necessary that the public perception of the integrity and commitment of the civil servants, right, become absolutely positive. Now here doctrine of democratic governance, these are the key terms that one should use it in the answer, and again the public perception of integrity and commitment of the civil servants, right? Now this is the again from the governance, right? Now if you look at the third question, now the West means the US and European Union basically along with the UK. The West is fostering India as alternative to reduce dependence on China's supply chain, right, and as a strategically to counter China's potential and economic dominance, right? Everyone knows that we are living in the Cold War 2.0, right? And there's a tension between China and US along with the West, right? So the West is trying to shift their supply chain base from China to India so that they can counter China's dominance in the future. So this is again IR question. This is a IR question. Now look at the question number 4. Critically analyze India's evolving diplomatic, economic, strategic relations with Central Asian Republic, right? Highlight their increasing significance in regional and global geopolitics. Now again this is from IR. So look at the 2 short questions from the governance and 2 short questions from international relations. Now look at the fifth question, which is a larger question. That this is this should be answered in 250 words and allocated to 20 marks around. Now if you look at what are the aims and objective of recently passed and enforced the Public Examination Prevention of Unfair Means Act 2024, whether the university or state examination board or school examination had been covered from this act or not, right? So this is the question. Now again, this is from governance. Now this is the first question from governance, which is a large, which should be answered in 250 words, the longer question. Now look at the next question. Here the citizen charters has been the landmark initiative in ensuring citizen-centric administration. Now look at this statement. The citizen charter has been the landmark initiative to ensuring citizen-centric administration, but it is yet to reach its full potential, right? Identify the factors hindering the realization of its promise and suggest measures to overcome them. Now this is again longer question, and this is again from governance. The last was also from governance, but it was a longer question, right? The last one, the governance. Now look at the next question. In a crucial domain like public health system, the Indian state should play a vital role to contain the adverse impact of marketization of the system. Now look at during COVID-19, what happened to the health system, right? And what is happening the health system in since 1990, right? Suggest some measures through which the state can enhance the reach of public health care at the grassroots level, right? So this is again from the governance. Now this is the third from longer question from governance. Now look at the question number 8. E-governance is not just about routine application of digital technology, right? Service delivery process. It is much about the multifarious interactions for ensuring transparency and accountability. So how governance has promoted transparency and accountability along with the digital technology, whether it is a fintech or the technology in education or technology in health, right? We need to focus on here that how technology has developed, right, to ensure accountability and transparency. In this context, evaluate the role of interactive service model of e-governance, right? So need to talk about extensively about interactive service model of e-governance. Now this is again from the governance part. Now if you look at here, right, the 4 question, longer question from the governance. Now if you look at 9th question, terrorism has become a significant threat to global peace and security. Evaluate the effectiveness of the United Nations Security Council's Counter-Terrorism Committee, right, and its associated bodies in addressing and mitigating the threat of the international level. So again, this is from IR. Now this is the first question, longer question from international relation. Now the next 10th question is discuss the geopolitical. Now look at the keyword geopolitical and geostrategic importance of the Maldives for India's, right, with a focus on global trade and energy flows, right? Further also discuss how these relationships affects India's maritime security. Now India's maritime security and regional stability amidst international competition. Now these are the 10 questions that had been asked in GS paper 2 that is related to governance and IR. We have seen 2 shorter question in IR, 2 shorter question in governance. Now 2 longer question in IR, 4 question, longer question in governance. Now we will discuss one, each question one by one with little detail. Now let me talk about the first question of, this was the 6th basically, 6th question in the paper. Now but here in governance I have made a series that and in the governance it was a first. Now public charitable trust have the potential to make India's development more inclusive as they relate to certain vital public issues. Now, one should come and write introduction, right? What should be the introduction? Now, to define the public charitable trust registered under Trust Act 1882, right? And they are playing vital role in India's developed social, economic and human development, right? Now, what are the potential? Now, talking about the potential to make India's development, right? Now, come to the body, right? Now, talk about the potential for India's development, right? The public charitable trust in India's development. Now, what could be the India's public charitable trust role in making India's development? Now, if you look at, there's these health, right? Education, right? Education, eradication of poverty, then if you look at more inclusion, women empowerment, then eradication of child labor, Now, these are the vital, sanitation, political participation, these are the vital issues in which, public trust plays a vital role. Now, apart from this, the religious congregation and maintaining peace and harmony in Indian society, right? Now, then one need to talk about, the charitable trust are taking donation from the public fund, but also government also promotes fund to the charitable trust, and this fund had been has controlled through, regulated through FCRA, FCRA, Financial Contribution Regulation Act, right? And that is control. Now, self-help group, that one can take the self-help group, one can take, this is also one of the trust, but of course not public, right? So that answer should be that, and that you have to write in 150 words. So it's so one should answer like that, right? What are the vital issues, right? Now, let me move to the second question, and the second question here is the doctrine of democratic governance. The doctrine of democracy makes it necessary that public perception of the integrity and commitment of the civil servants becomes absolutely positive. Now, if you look at what is democratic governance, doctrine of democratic governance, right? Doctrine of democratic governance, focus on a rule of law, right? Rule of law, right? Equality, participation, inclusion, right? Then, right? Inclusion, then transparency, and accountability, right? Now, the doctrine of democratic governance also talking about power to the people, right? Power to the people. This is because it is a democratic governance, right? This is doctrine of democratic governance. So one should write about in introduction about democratic governance, right? Now, why it is necessary, for the public perception? Why democratic governance? Why democratic governance? Right? Now, why? Now, first is to follow equality and equity, right? Second is inclusion of socially disadvantaged group like SC, ST, women, right? Then third is participation, right? Then fourth is, accountability and participation. Accountability and participation. Participation of people and also of community. Community involvement in development is very, very important, right? Now, then one can write about, right, the participation, yeah. Then, transparency, yeah, transparency, right? So this doctrine of democratic governance, it is necessary, makes it necessary that public perception of the integrity. Now, removal of the doctrine of democratic governance makes it necessary that the public perception of the integrity and commitment of the civil servants becomes absolutely positive. Now, right, what are the problems in one should write about what are the issues with public perception of the civil servant. Now, public perceptions are not good, because why? Colonial heritage, red tapeism, then the very strict rule and regulations implementations, right? Not opaqueness, poor governance, right? So one should include, and then one should conclude it, the doctrine of democratic governance again, and then write the doctrine of democratic governance make it necessary that the public perception of the integrity and commitment of the civil servants make absolutely positive, right? So this is the key term that one should use, and this is the keywords one should explain in their answers, right? Now let me move to the next question. The West means here the US and European Union and UK. You all know that UK has already made an exit from from European Union. So Europe is fostering India as an alternative to reduce dependence on China's supply chain as a strategically to counter China's political and economic dominance. Now, one should write about the current scenario that China is not trying to, not trying to counter US, but in dominance, right? Economic dominance, trade dominance, military dominance, right? But it also trying to replace China in international politics, right? Whether it is a economy, whether it is a military, whether it is a technology, and so on, right? And the West is actually shifting their supply chain from China to India, right? Now, West has also made, for example, Quad, right? If you look at here, the US is a partner in the Quad, right? And US is actually, facing challenges from China, right? So entire EU, Britain, UK, and the US trying to focus supply chain from China to India, whether it is a economy, whether it is a technology, or the company. Many companies have shifted from China to India, right? And Japan is also doing the same, right? Because if you look at China is a very threat to the US and EU, right? Now we have made free trade agreement here, right? With this free trade agreement is with talk with UK, with EU, right? And with other, we have done already with Australia, right? We have already formed Quad in order to counter China, right? And US, UK, EU, as well as India has same strategic goal, and that is goal, to check China. Why to check China? Because of, China is becoming imperialist or expansionist. Recently, the Prime Minister has said that China is becoming expansionist, right? And it has made like BRI program, to replace US in in global politics, right? So that information should be written in the answers. Now I will move to the next question, and here the question number 4. Now look at okay. So if you look at question number 4, critically analyze India's evolving diplomatic, economic and strategic relations with Central Asian Republic. Now, first you have to talk about what is this Central Asian republics. So like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, right? Then these are the Central Asian Republic countries. Now, since 2014, India made several agreements related to defense, cyber security, energy with the Central Asian countries. Now we have defense cooperation with Kazakhstan. India had made defense cooperation with Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and if you look at these countries, are facing similar problem. Like India also facing the same problem. Right? What are those problems? The problem is cyber security, terrorism, right? Human trafficking, drugs. Opium is the very much problem. And if you look at Afghanistan, is producing opium, right? And there is a drug trafficking, in the India through the route of Pakistan, right? So need to write about the each defense cooperation between India and Kazakhstan, right? India and Kyrgyzstan, India and Uzbekistan, right? And also talking about the the various agreements done by India and country individually, but also at several forums like SCO, right? Like SCO, right? Fine. So that need to be talked about. So, but if you see critically examination, China is also having influence on these countries, and China is actually dominating this country, and most of the trade relations with this country have with China, right? So and India is trying to establish so many air base with these countries, and India has got success into it, but still India has challenges because of China, right? So these things should be written in this, and there are in conclusion that we have further cooperations that is very in positive mode between India and Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, right, and so on. Now let me move to the next question. What are the aims and objectives of recently passed and enforced the Public Examination Prevention of Unfair Means Act? Whether university or state education board examinations are covered or not. Now this question is very simple, aims and objective. Now if you look at aims, the first you need to write about the introduction that the Indian government has passed the Public Examination Prevention of Means Act 2024 in order to curb unfair means and paper leakages in the public examination. And then you write aims and objectives. Now what are the aims and objectives? Objectives is to curb paper leak, right? And unfair means. Now to enhance government's credibility. This is the longer question, so you need to write a lot, right? Then third, to generate public trust. right? One can detail in 2-3 lines. Then fourth, to raise public awareness. Public awareness, right? Now fifth, no, to prevent corruption. As you know that in several, last few years, the leak paper had been leaked. Not only NEET paper, SSC paper, and several papers of a state, state public examination had been leaked, right? So one need to write about aims and objectives, and then talk about to punish transgressor. Now if you look at this law, the Public Examination Prevention of Unfair Means Act 2024 have very harsh punishment, right? Now the person who are involved into this must be arrested without warrant, and this is non-bailable offense, right? Then if you look at the punishment, one has to maybe sentenced from 5 years to 10 years or 1 crore rupee. Now the second part is asking about whether state or university examination boards too are covered under the act. That is the second part of the question. Now if you see that the Public Examination Prevention of Unfair Means Act 2024 talks about that it covers school examinations, state board examinations, medical examinations, then university examinations, right? So it covers extensively, right? Now what could be the way forward? Way forward? Now the way forward way, right, that it should be enforceable, and there should be a body to implement the law, right? Secondly, public awareness must be raised, right? And the third is, if you look at this law, must be implemented in a spirit and letter, right? So this could be the way forward in these answers. So this is the answer one should write, right, in this format. Now let me talk about question number. So now look at the test paper, talking about the data, how many tests had been conducted by many states. If you look at, several states have their own public service commission or a staff selection commission, or the center conducts SSC and railway board. So if you look at several states, like if you look at the examinations, so for example Jammu Kashmir conduct 3 examinations, and for there are 2330 posts, right? Or for example, if you look at Jharkhand, recent year conducted 1 examination for the 2010 post, and there was applicant was 5,50,000, right? Now if you look at Bihar, conducted 3 examination and post was 24,380, but if you look at the applicants, right? So if you look at this huge amount of cost, trust is invested in conduction of when the public examination is conducted, right? So therefore if you look at the one should conclude with the certain analysis of this data. Now look at the Citizen Charter. The Citizen Charter has been landmark initiative to ensuring citizen-centric administration, but it is yet to reach its full potential. Identify the factors hindering the realization of its promise and suggest measures to overcome them. So there are 3 questions in this longer questions, and 3 questions should be dealt separately. Now first is, the Citizen Charter has been a landmark initiative in ensuring citizen-centric administration. Now one should write about what is citizen-centric, right? What is Citizen Charter? Citizens Charter, right? Now Citizen Charter is a set of claim of the citizen against the public body, right? Whether it's a bank or whether it's a government body, or right. And then citizen charter, one can write about it, it was initiated in UK, and later on it was initiated in India in 2005. Now, Department of Public Grievances and Personal Affairs is responsible to, to implement the citizen charter. Now, approximately 600 citizen charter had been already in place, right? And citizen charter, right, about the objective of citizen charter. What is the objective of citizen charter? Transparency, accountability, right, participation, inclusion, right? These are the objectives of, right, citizen charter act, and it is very much citizen centric. Right? Now, second is, but it has yet to reach its full potential. Now, write the issues with citizen charter. Issues with citizen charter. Now, what are the issues with citizen charter? Right? Now, issues, and if you look at the next question, which is very much similar, right? Identify the factors hindering in realization of its promises and suggest. Right? Now, issue with the citizen charter, it is not legally enforceable. Right? It is not legally enforceable. Right? So, non-enforceable legally. Not enforceable legally. Now, second, there are plethora of acts, right? Each state has their own act, and each act is in the English language, right? Language is also a problem. So, there are plethora of citizen charter act, and which is not, intended to, solve the problem of citizens largely, because their law is very much, lethargic, or you can say that not citizen centric. Now, third is, citizens had not been conducted when citizen charter was formed, right? Citizen charter was formed. So, these are the basic problem with the, citizen charter, right? Now, identify the factors hindering the realization of its promises. Now, what promises has been done? The citizen charter. Citizen charter has done promises of enhancing quality, right? Doing respect to the cost, the public cost. Then third is giving citizens access and right to get the service done in the proper time framework, right? Then participation. So these were the promises that was done in the citizen charter, right? What are the hindrances? Now, hindrances again are problem, the legal hindrances, the economic hindrances, the linguistic hindrances, because most of the citizen charter are English language rather than the lingua franca, right? The different languages, right? So these are the issues with citizen charter, and one should then conclude, right, some way forward. What should be the way forward of the citizen charter? Now, the way forward would be, making it enforceable. Right, there should be a body, and there should be constitutional recognition of the rights, citizen charter rights, because it is important for the citizen to get access to the rights it pay for, right? And there should be government to the people, rather than people should follow and chase the government, right? So some way forward should be included in this answer, and one should close. Now, look at the next question. In a crucial domain like public health center system, Indian state should play a vital role to contain the adverse impact of marketization of the system. Suggest some measures through which the state can enhance the reach of the public health care at the grassroots level. Now, look at in a crucial domain. Look at the first, you talk about the public health system, right? Health care system, right? And its vastness. Now one can write about public healthcare system and give example like Ayushman Bharat or Kadi Yojana or Aadhaar numbers, right? Or there are multiple schemes, Matru Bandhana Yojana. Within Matru Bandhana Yojana there are 6 subsets of health like immunizations, right? Early child care and so on, right? And then one can talk about the body, come to the body, right? Now here is marketization of the system. Now if you look at the health care, right, due to the marketization there are problems. So write about the problem of marketization of healthcare. Now what are the problems of the marketization? Now market work for the profit, right, not for the service. Market work for the profit, not for the service. Now if you look at, they are actually, make the rules and regulations which is not suitable to the people, right? And it goes against the interest of the people who try, access to the private health care. Then, first, if you look at insurance system, now if you look at health insurance, there are, health insurance, a plethora of health insurance services, right? And many banks engages into it, but there are many fraud in public health care in this insurance. And due to this insurance, there is a problem, right? Because this insurance has played a very vital role in marketization of the healthcare system, right? Now, third, if you look at non-accessible to poor cannot access to the market health system. There are new types of healthcare system, super speciality hospital. You must have heard about the Max or Apollo or this or that, but this Max or Apollo are not accessible to the poor, right? Now fourth, if you look at the poverty in India. Again, this is related to the first one. Now, we have, what is the alternative then? Alternative. Now there are multiple government schemes that deals with the public healthcare system. There are a series of health mission and schemes and policies of the government that one should put, right? And then you write about some measures that through which the state can enhance the public healthcare system at grassroots level. Now the first health measures that one can suggest is the public awareness. If you look at, the government have multiple healthcare schemes like Matru Bandhana Yojana or or Ayushman Bharat or Aukadi or Fit India, right? There are multiple. So public awareness through the radio, through the television are very, very important, right? So public awareness is very, very important. Now involvement of civil society group. Now why civil society group? Because they will help the people, right, in information, making awareness and dealing with the schemes and the language that schemes have, or certain intricacy that particular schemes have, right? Then the third measures would be involving community groups and leaders, especially in those areas like tribal areas, right, and or the backward areas, economic backward areas, where the involvement of leaders would be very important, right? Right now, then the fourth is making compulsory for the doctors. Let me tell you, making compulsory for the doctors, right, while doing the MBBS or MD to to serve the certain period of time in rural India, right, and grassroots level, so that they can serve and public can be benefited from the public health care system. because government pay, invest lots of money to the doctors, right? Now, then, the right to health must be recognized through the constitution, right? Of course, Article 21 guarantees, several rights related to health, like right to pollution free water or pollution free air, but this is something which is not realizable. There are multiple issues, right? So certain fundamental through the constitution, right to public health should be recognized, right? And then next is discouragement of the marketization of the public health center. Now, if you look at, the government had opened public, healthcare system, and there are, the private health centers have been opened up even in the small town. And if you want to go to the small town in UP and Bihar or Haryana or any, now if you look at this private health center is full of the local people, right, coming from the rural areas, right? And then one can write about the way forward, right? What could be the way forward for making this public health center more realizable and beneficial to the people, right? And this way one should deal with this question, right? Now let me talk about the e-governance. Now, look at the e-governance is not just about the routine application of digital technology in service delivery process. It is much about multifarious interactions of ensuring transparency and accountability. Now, question, if you look at the transparency and accountability, in this context, evaluate the role of interactive service model, right? Now, of e-governance. So, first start with the introduction e-governance, right? What is e-governance, right? And then talk about the objective, right? And one should write about the application of digital technology, right, in the or ICT, information technology, and write about the certain programs, for example, e-Pathshala or e-Vidya or several schemes. That is right. But question is is many schemes one should write, and then one should write about that while these policies are on the ground, but there are multiple problems. There are multiple problems, right? Now, what are the multiple problems? What are the issues with e-governance? Issues with e-governance, right? Now, one should write about the issues with e-governance, and then what are the issues with e-governance? The problem is the lack of digital literacy, right? Then lack of English language, right? Then if you look at the cybercrime, right? Cybercrime, then poverty or lack of access to digital technology, lack of access, right? Now, then one should move to the ensuring transparency and accountability, right? Now, the second part of the question, right? It is much about the multifarious interaction of the ensuring transparency and accountability. Now, for this part, one should write about what is the major provisions under the interactive service model. Now, government, sarkar aapke dwar. Now, government is to your and government is started several delivery schemes. So, government delivering at the door at door, right? And there are multiple schemes that has been delivering to the door, right? And there are multiple schemes related to food, or if you look at direct transfer, DBT, direct benefit transfer, or there are other delivery services provision done by the government, right? So one should evaluate. Now again, challenges to the interactive service model. what are the challenges, right? Again, challenges is, the major challenges are the intermediary, right? Intermediary are basically, taking lots of benefit, right? And they just take certain part of that delivery. Now, second is, look at the corruption now, right? The third is, if you look at the awareness of the people, public awareness, right? The fourth is, if you look at the lack of knowledge, right? Even people are aware, but they don't know how to access this, services, right? So one should, right? And then come to the way forward. And way forward, right? What can be done for, better, for ensuring transparency and accountability, right? Under the interactive service model, which guarantee delivery of services, government services at door, right? Now, I will move to the next question, and here terrorism has become a significant threat to global peace and security. Evaluate the effectiveness of the United Nations Security Council's Counterterrorism Committee and its associated bodies in addressing and mitigating this threat. And so first, one should, in introduction, one should talk about the terrorism, right? Terrorism, right, is a global threat for peace and security, not for India, but around the globe. The globe is facing terrorism as a major challenge, right? And terror had global network, right? And the global network. Now, what is this effective UN Security Council's Terrorism Committee? Now, talk about the UNO Security Council's Terrorism Committee, CTC, right? Right? Now, this had been came in 2001, right? This has come under the resolution of 1373 UN resolution that has been passed. Now, write about the objective of this UN Security Council Counterterrorism Committee, CTC. Now, what are the objective? Now, objective is mitigating terrorism, right? Ensuring peace and security, combating finance, right? Combating finance in global terrorism. Then fourth is ensuring cooperation and coordination among the nation state for combating terrorism, right? Now, talk about the associated bodies. Now, if you look at this UN Security Council Counterterrorism Committee, it has two bodies. One is CTC, and another is called Counterterrorism, DE, right? That is executive, right? Directorate executive. Now, what are the role of CTC? Basically, they are ensuring, right, proper regulation and observation of the terrorism around the globe, right? And this has 15 members. See, all Security Council members are the members of the Counter-Terrorism Committee, and the objective of Counter-Terrorism Committee is to combat global terrorism. Now, if you look at, this CTD came under the UN resolution number 1535. That is resolution number 1535 that has been established in 2004. Now, what are the, basically this is a political mission, right, of this counterterrorism directorate executive, and this actually has to, make combinations and, appeal to the international community and also help the CTC politically. So basically, it is a political missions with the institutions, right, to counter or combat terrorism. Right. So basically, have to write about the functions of the CTC and the functions of the CTD. right? So these are the actually analysis of these questions, and then write about the challenges of terrorism, apart from the terrorism, the challenges, and then way forward, right? Because United Nations must take new initiative for the terrorism, right? Because if you look at United Nations have failed to combat terrorism, right? And there is a the world is under threat, right? Under threat of global terrorism, which is a challenge, posing challenges for peace and security worldwide, right? So this is a question on terrorism. Now let me move to the next question. Discuss the geopolitical and the geostrategic importance of the Maldives. Now if you look at the Maldives, right, Maldives is just in Indian Ocean, right? And if you look at for India's geopolitical, Maldives is very, very important for India's geopolitical, because if you look at this is something dot trade routes, right, where the trade goes, right, and India's trade must be secured. Now if you look at Sri Lanka has good tie with developed a tie with China, and China has actually overtaken the Hambantota port, and there is information that China has sent a spy ship to Hambantota port to observe India. So basically this Maldives is very important for geopolitical. Now if you look at here here if you look at one is called Garso Diago Island, where the US has posted navy base with nuclear nuclear capacity, right? So there are if you look at the geopolitical, Maldives is very important. Now come to the geostrategic. Now if you look at from the India, if you look at it is an Indian Ocean, and it is an Indian Ocean, and then India has most of the trade from the sea route, right? Whether it is a energy or trade, right? And the South Indian Ocean has also rich resources for energy, right? China's route is also there, and China is actually China is expanding its hold in Indian Ocean, right? Although China is actually talking about they are actually increasing the presence of the military in order to protect their own trade, but it has threat to India's security, especially maritime security, right? So Maldives is very important for geopolitically and geostrategically, because Maldives can play a vital role when India have conflict with China, right? Because China and India have constant frictions, and this is live frictions now due to the BRI, right? Because one BRI goes from the Pakistan, that is called China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, right? China has actually made its claim on several part of India's territory, and lastly there is a Galwan class, right, that has made India-China basically rivalry, right? On the other hand, if you look at India and China, both are rivalry in Asia, right? And China wants to contain India, India wants to contain China. In such context, Maldives is very, very important, right? And for the for the maritime security. Now, if you look at there is an international competition of power and between the US and China, right? India is also a major power, right? It is trying to becoming a superpower, right? So if you look at the relationship, how this relationship affects India's maritime security and regional stability amidst international competition. So in this international competition between India and between US and China, right? Here it is very important for India to have control on Maldives. And if you see India's have taken so many policies, for example, neighborhood policies, or for example, India neighborhood first policy, or Sagar missions. India has helped Maldives and Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and other countries during the COVID, right? So Maldives and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, all three are very important for India's maritime security, right? Because all these country are actually littoral country, right? And for the regional stability, if you look at, it is very important for India to have a very peaceful Indian Ocean, right? Right? So that India, there will be, that there could be no threat to India. And India has taken several policies, right? One can talk about the few policy name like Sagarmala, right? Or Sagar 1 or Sagar 2.0, right? Or BIMSTEC, where Maldives is an important part, right? And then there is a anti-India campaigning that is going on in Maldives, not only in Maldives but also in Bangladesh and other neighboring country, right? And it is very important for India to have good relations with Maldives, and Maldives is very much geopolitically, geostrategically important for India's maritime security, right? So that this way one should address the question, right? And then right? And the question was not so difficult and not so easy, of course. This time question was little tricky, but those who have already studied this question, practiced it and studied well, they must have done very well. And I hope you have done it well, right? And we have done somehow some level of analysis, right? And here I will stop. See you. Thank you so much.